Hello and welcome to episode 469 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, the place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt and joining me as always is the creator of the comic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And did you know, Dan, that the man who holds the world record for most petit falou eaten in a minute is Tony Esmond? And here he is.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Are they still doing that, petit falou?
I don't know what it is. What is it again?
It's like a little French yogurt thing. It's
in the tube.
So pet lunch, right?
Yeah, it's
They do
in
cheese
like a
awful.
plastic. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'm all for squeezy cheese, but not. You know what I mean?
Come
What
on.
like
Yeah.
a Primula?
Yeah, I like all
We
that.
always get onto the hard-hitting topics as soon as we
Yeah.
start every show now.
Well,
Have
to
you
be
noticed
fair, Vince, I believe we did have a hard-hitting topic, which we haven't told Dan yet.
that? No, but we'll get into that later on because I think
Okay,
we can mention it
Dan.
in the
It's
show.
important.
Yeah, prepared to be shocked.
Dan,
Yeah.
you will be pretty.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know what shocks me every week though is how amazing our sponsor is.
You're right.
And thank you to Global Comics for sponsoring the show as always. As on the video we're seeing now, Tony is reading.
I've become a giant.
He's reading the smallest printed comic I've ever seen. But if I want to read digital comics, I can see them on my screen, on my iPad, and I can read them brilliantly on Global Comics, of which there's a huge library of titles available to read, from thousands of indie creators, hundreds of publishers like Image, Boom, Tokyo Pop, TKO Studios, SourcePoint Press, Humanoids, Mad Cave Comics. Vault have got an awful lot on there that I've started working my way through at the moment, which is brilliant. And the catalogue is growing.
Are you reading the
time.
normal comics? Or are you reading those scrolling ones? I can't deal with those scrolling
I haven't
ones.
started.
No.
I haven't started the scrolling ones yet, but some of them do look pretty good. But speaking of pretty good, what have you chaps noticed on there this week?
Well, let me ask you both this question. Let me ask you, Dan. Do you like aliens?
Yeah.
Vince, do you like pterodactyls?
I know where this is going, and yes,
And both of you, do you like bikini babes with guns?
yes.
Why not read Alien Pterodactyls?
Now, what I saw about this comic that I need to bring up to you, pterodactyls,
Spelled with the word terror.
but yeah, because there's a silent P, isn't there?
There's an A in pterodactyls, isn't there?
No, but like a P at the beginning of a pterodactyl.
Oh, of course. I see what you mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
This is
right.
just
what
the
do you
word
think I
terror.
was talking about?
I wasn't sure. I kind of zoned out. I got a text
But
and I was thinking, oh,
pterodactyl, I'm on board. I'm back in.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
love
there's a
that.
girl with an M16 in a bikini on the cover. Yeah.
Job
Get
done.
on it.
Big tick.
Yeah.
Big what? Anyway,
Big
what did
tick.
you know? What about you, Dan? What have you noticed?
Well, I was going to say, Vince, you remind me of the Babe.
Oh God, the Babe.
What is the
Babe
Babe,
with the
then?
power? I'll tell you what it is. It's Labyrinth. The Jim Henson collection is on Global Comics right now. You can read Labyrinth, Dark Crystal Storyteller. What I like about Jim Henson, it reminds me a lot of our listenership, like the Jim Henson Workshop. Sorry, listeners, for insulting you like that.
Yeah.
What's the one?
Dan
with-
imagined you like a bunch of goblins who sing in the background of a David Bowie song.
What's that later one where they're in it? Is it a load of flumps in a heap or something? What's that one?
That's Fraggle Rock.
Fraggle Rock.
Isn't it?
I love, if you watch Neil by Mouth, that's what they call the sex offenders wing in prison, don't they? Fraggle Rock.
I'll tell you what, though, I've never heard Fraggle Rock described as a load of flumps in a heap.
I kind of got the reference. Isn't it the big heap? Is that big pile of shit that they go and speak to?
Yeah, that's another creature, isn't it?
Yeah.
The heap. I think you're right. Yeah, almost had it, didn't I?
They've got
Almost went with
Fraggle
it.
Rock comic on
Yeah,
there,
there's
so-
so
Yeah.
many layers. There's so many layers to Fraggle Rock.
Are there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because
Yeah,
you had the
literally.
top. You had the because you had the Fraggles. Then you had the Doozers, and then there was the human world, and then there
Yeah.
was the guy with the what? How do you describe the big?
What are you, head
hairy
of their
fella?
fan club? This is more knowledge I've ever
I was born and raised
experienced.
by Fraggles.
I felt
That's the
kind of
West
sorry
Country
for
for you. Boom.
Hey,
Hey!
those
Anyone-
doses. They used to make those kind of constructs that the Fraggles used to just eat at whim.
I know,
And it's
the
like,
Doozers,
what
man.
the fuck's going on?
workers' rights. That's what
Yeah.
Doozers need to fight for. Anyway,
Anyway, hopefully they cover those kind of issues in the Fraggle Rock comic. I doubt
Yeah.
it, but
No.
They're not. It's not about sex offenders. It's about
No.
flumps.
all
No,
workers'
flumps.
rights and
No.
unionisation of
No.
the Doozers.
but
and cannibalism.
but those sort of topics, all of those topics are probably covered in comics that you'll be able to find in Global Comics.
Cornholio.
And with the Global Comics app, You can read loads of comics. You can set reading status filters, notifications for upcoming books. For instance, it told me all about the second issue of Rook Exodus that I know the other chaps have read. I've just started reading it, and it's blown,
fucking ace.
it has blown
it's
my
really
testicles
good.
clean off my body.
good.
Yeah.
That's how good
That's
it
how you
is.
do a comic, isn't it? That's how you do a comic.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Geiger's
So-
really the other issues of Geiger on there as well. Just loving
Yes,
that.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
really good.
notifications for that, and of course, if there's titles that you find on Global Comics, set the notification filters, and it always lets you know when the new issues are being added. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
You can also follow creators, and also, if you're a creator, you can publish your digital comics on there, and they offer loads of great tools for indie creators to help with publishing, marketing, and more. So whether you're a comics reader, creator, or maybe someone new to the hobby, find out about Global Comics by going to Global Comics, that's comics with an X.com. You can also download the app now on the Apple App Store or Google Play, and you can start reading and publishing digital comics like never before. And thank you to them for supporting the show, and no doubt listening to these ads and thinking, what the
What the
Wow,
fuck?
those guys are sexy. What?
just from my voice? You think this is like 90 minutes, 2 hours of ASMR for people?
I reckon if you
Pretty
put
much.
us on Pornhub, we get a few hits.
You
Yeah.
reckon?
Yeah,
Few comments.
yeah.
Oh, there'll be forums dedicated as well.
Few shared to
Who's
social
your
media.
favourite?
What
Yeah.
psychopath's going to do that?
Don't encourage them, Dan. But what we will encourage our lovely listeners to do is to check out this lovely interview we had, and it was genuinely lovely and great and good fun. And we talk about editing, collaboration, vintage comics, vintage books. Tony nerds out a little bit, but about what
Yeah, we had a good chat.
you'll have to find out what we talk
You
about.
you thought it was something else when we started. To be fair.
Well, we'll probably get onto that afterwards, because right now, you lovely people go listen to this brilliant interview with Peter Duncan. Okay, this week we're joined by the governor behind such titles as WAP, Splank, and Yow. I mean, when I was writing that in the script, that was just so fun to just write it, let me say it. Cthulhu Kids and Sector 13 Comics, who some of you may have heard about on this very show. Welcome to the show, Peter Duncan.
Thank you very much, guys. Very
Good
good
to have
to
you,
be
mate.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time coming.
Yeah, and obviously your books and your work have been mentioned quite a few times on the show, but also there was a little thing called Eniskillon Comic Con, which happened just recently, that we've heard quite a lot of buzz about, but I think you're the only person on this show that was actually there. So, what was that show like?
Is that a regular for yours, Pete? Is it? Or sorry, to start with.
Enniskillon's the main show in Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Right.
There's Enniskillon and there's one other Comic Con, but whenever we went to it, we were outnumbered. The comics people were outnumbered by the people doing live tattoos. So it's that sort of show.
That's
Seriously,
interesting.
that was.
What did you get
that was
done?
it.
My Little Pony?
I'm not showing you that. No, Enniskillon's a very relaxed show. It's run by Paul Trimble, who I've known for a long time, and Paul is very good at getting interesting guests, bringing them over, treating them very well, and it's incredibly relaxed.
I think I know Paul
That's
Trimble
great.
from his stuff on Mega City Book Club. He does quite a few little guest slots talking about. I'm going to say he's a big fan of Battle. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he runs the Facebook battle group.
Ah, cool. Yeah. So it's very sort of UK comic centric, mostly. I'm going to say.
It is, yes, it is. In fact, I'm not sure how many stalls there were selling American comics. It was mostly people, homegrown comics and British comics and related paraphernalia.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, nice.
Because there's a lot of stuff with yours which harkens back to that, and something that the love in my heart has grown ever so much over the years. Like the vintage weeklies and all of that sort of stuff. There's a real sort of maybe I'm just opening my eyes to it now, but like these battle groups, something beyond the 2000 AD fan base. There's like the eyes are being opened to those great action battles.
Which we wouldn't have 2000 AD if it wasn't for a lot of these titles.
No.
I think.
Well, 2000 AD always struck me whenever it began as being the British comic that American comic fans read. And so it sort of combined both fandoms.
Yeah.
And that's probably why it survived and the others didn't. And it was a good model for getting good comics out, which we've struggled with in the UK, I think.
Yeah. If you want to listen to a talk with Pat Mills, Mega City just put one out yesterday, didn't they? With Pat, which is a really good one. Eamon chats to Pat for a while on that one. Really good, really nice interview.
Good shout.
Yeah. Who were some of the guests then, Pete, that you of note there? Because I know I've had a debrief on an answer phone message from Johnny Cannon about how amazing it was to meet one of them. But did you want to give a little shout out to some of the guests who were there, because they're quite the names, aren't they? You know.
Yeah, well, I think that was probably Alan Davis.
It was, yeah, because Eniskillon had Alan Davis, which is, in all due respect to it, in a hall, you know, in a town, you know, and then so I was going to try and get to Eniskillon, but I couldn't because I was at Heroes last weekend in America, and the queues for Alan Davis of that were literally across the hall. You know, but if I'd gone to Eniskillon, I guess I'd have probably got a chance to have a chat with him. I'm thinking, yeah.
Oh, almost certainly, yes. It's a church hall,
right?
So you had Alan, you had Cam Kennedy,
nice,
Mick McMahon, Anna Morozova, Will Simpson was beside us. We know Will well.
Nice.
I was delighted to we helped bring over a couple of people. So Dave Windett, who used to work for the Dandy and has done some amazing strips for me. It was nice to see Dave over. Mark Rehall, Jeff Senior, Clint Langley was there.
Oh, cool.
John Higgins, Mike Collins, and the night in the hall, the day in the hall is great. But what's even more fun is everyone repairs to a pub just up the road on the Saturday night. And now it being 2 days, that's made that Saturday night into something really a bit special, where you all sit around and it's very, very relaxed, very relaxed.
2000 AD people drink more than the Queen Mother.
A lot.
Pete. Yeah. You know, they really do, don't they?
Put it back.
Yeah, I'm proud of that reputation, to be fair. Yeah.
The 2000 AD thing's interesting. I became editor of Sector 13 at a time when I hadn't read 2000 AD for 15 years.
Right.
I caught up when I did do that, but it was one of the ones that had fallen by the wayside whenever I was still working. And it was only whenever I wasn't working anymore that I had the time to read everything I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Will Simpson. Will Simpson's in Sector 13, isn't he? Is that right?
Will has done 2 covers for us and 1 strip.
Cool.
Which was John Smith continuation, basically, of the last Turney Rex strip he drew for 2000 AD.
What a cover, man. What an amazing cover that is as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Will keeps telling us it wasn't finished yet.
That's the artist's way.
Yeah, it's never finished, always only abandoned.
Yeah, so we've got this
did
church...
one...
No, go for it.
Sorry.
No, you go.
No, just... He had drawn a previous cover for us as well, or painted a previous cover for us as well.
Awesome.
So you got that church hall sort of filled with these names that you've been rattling off, and of course you've got what was it like for you, like tabling this year?
This year was excellent. Our table was completely full. We brought out a 3-part Sector 13 last year, and we had 4 new comics this year. So our table was completely full. Plus, we also bring along comics by a guy called Bob Curran, who's also from Northern Ireland, and Bob wasn't able to make it. So we have him along. And we have a couple of guys who work with us. Paddy Brown, who does these amazing adaptations of the Ulster cycle of stories that Slane is theoretically based on in red biro. And they are incredible. They're absolutely incredible.
That sounds amazing.
Paddy has just done what we think is the best work he's ever done in 1900. He did one story that's just amazing, but this red biro thing he did was fantastic. And on the occasions where we've been spoken to by academics about the comics we have on our desk, we've been told that this is the closest to what they think of as the Ulster cycle that you'll find anywhere.
Brilliant.
Wow. And also,
so
whenever I see artists doing anything in biro, it's usually another level.
All over that. Yeah.
You know, I love seeing that. Carry on, Tony.
Yeah. So so you were so this isn't the first time you've tabled though, Pete, I'm guessing.
No, we table every year. and it's probably 50% of our sales.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Because you were saying to me on the messages yesterday or the day before, it was your best day ever.
Yes, this was our best day ever.
What do you put that down to?
Well, I think because we had a little of everything.
Right.
Bob Kern's comics tend to be horror comics or fantasy. We've got Paddy's traditional Ulster stories. Waps, Splank, and Yow appeal to kids as well as to comics fans. I'm fairly certain most kids aren't going to get all the jokes.
No.
At least I hope they're not going to get all the jokes. But they seem to really react well to it.
And you dress as a penguin. You dress as a penguin because it's going to help.
I didn't dress as a penguin this year.
What's the one with a drawing of you dressed in a penguin? That's one of them, isn't it?
That's Splank, yeah.
Splank, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We'll get onto that later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then obviously Sector 13, which is now a deal. It's a 2000 AD. It's there with Zarjazz on these sort of 2000 AD fanzines, which there are a few, but it's certainly one of the better ones, I think.
We started about 7 years ago. The 40th anniversary, and it kind of was close to the time I just retired through ill health, and my health had sort of came back, which proved that working was the problem. And it started basically because myself and a guy called Lawrence McKenna, who's the only constant apart from myself from the very beginning. Lawrence and I started it effectively, but we had a very, I'm trying to think of what the right word is. We had a very idealistic view of what it should be, and it was very much a collective at that stage.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So why did you start it? Was it just an enthusiastic group of comic friends, or what was the energy reasoning?
I suppose a lot of what I'm interested in has always been just people getting involved. I was 17 in 1977 when punk started, and I've always kind of kept that everybody should have a go at things. So we had this group that met on once a month on a Friday night of 2000 AD fans. We had Eniskillon Comic Con coming up, and it was the 40th anniversary of 2000 AD, and we wanted to do something. And this was what we came up with for our first issue.
Awesome.
And it was a slightly different format when it started, wasn't it? It was now it's sort of full glossy covered magazine size, but back then you've gone through a couple of different format changes, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it was printed by a print shop. Basically it was a photocopy shop printed it for us on incredibly heavy paper, just unbelievably heavy paper. And it was 24 or 28 pages. Charitably, 3 or 4 of them could be said to have been filler, and we thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
and we spelled Titanic wrong on the cover.
Oh, you said that, yeah. Genius. Yeah.
So, how do you go about acquiring creators' talent for working on your various books?
I annoy people online. I see people who I want to get work from, and I annoy them. It's as simple as that. If you don't ask, you don't get.
True. There's a lot of things I see when people kind of pitch their work saying, I want to do this, and here's some of my work samples. And it's like, most of the jobs I've got is through people I know, and you kind of, they can be trusted and they're going to turn in the work and not just some internet rando. So kind of getting involved in forums and groups like yourself, where you get to know people, that's a good way in, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And Facebook groups, we would get a lot of people from Facebook groups. We put out the call that we want people to work. And in terms of writers, there's an awful lot of the writers are people who I've annoyed and just worried and gone, will you write something for us? Will you write something, write anything? And that's where it had been mentioned about editorial philosophy. Well, there's sort of two. We either leave people to do what they want, or if there's people who really don't know how to write comics, we work with them until we've got a comic for them.
Okay. So like a complete understanding of like 2000 AD is helpful, but not totally necessary. They can kind of, if they're a kind of decent writer, they can get on board.
Well, we've always done stories that weren't 2000 AD. We've always done science fiction stories, and Julia Round, who wrote the book on Misty, I annoyed Julia to write a story for us in a Misty style. So, you know, we've gone to other styles as well. So no, and to be honest, we're not really looking for Sector 13 stories at the moment.
Okay.
We're looking for things for the new themed anthology that 1900 is the first issue of.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Did you want to explain what that is then at the moment? Was it the first issue just come out, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the things with Sector 13, we are not allowed to pay anybody anything.
Right. Okay.
It's the only person who gets paid or is allowed to make any money is the printer. Otherwise, it's a no-no. And that's what 2000 AD say whenever you ask them for permission. Okay. And to be honest, we felt a bit guilty about some of the people who have done so much work for us and so much superb work. Joseph Paranga, who drew the Cthulhu-based Judge story that I wrote, you know, superb work. I think it's of a professional standard. And we felt guilty asking him all the time. So we decided to move on and try something else. Okay. 1900 had been my idea, sort of what if a comic had been started in 1877. That was the basic theme. But we decided we're going to keep going with that. It's going to be called S13. So S13 number 1 is 1900. S13 2 will be either a war-themed comic or a science fiction comic, but looking more at Metal Hurlant style than 2000 AD. And then we've another idea for something to come after that.
So each one has a sort of theme or sort of kind of period setting.
Each one will be a different comic, and if one does particularly well or we find it particularly interesting, we'll do a second one. So there's quite likely to be a second 1900 now.
It gives you a nice sort of like variation when you've got that comic table, haven't you, as well? You know, there's you don't
absolutely.
You could love 1900, or if it's not for you, then maybe the Metal Hurlant sort of one is more for you. There's no real if I miss out on issue 2, you know, if I buy issue 2, then I don't necessarily need issue 1. That's the beauty of those sort of themed anthologies, isn't it? You can sort of pick as a reader, as a consumer. I hate the term consumer, but you can pick and choose what you like, can't you? Really.
So as a publisher, you kind of have to react to kind of what's popular, what's selling, and what you enjoy creating. So kind of,
I'll be honest, it's more what we enjoy creating, because we're not in this for money. We're not going to make money out of it. We're doing this because we love doing it. So the one thing, the war theme is basically because Eniskillon, there's so much emphasis on battle in Eniskillon. And we thought we should do something there, but we want to do something that's not like battle. We will have some traditional adventure stories, but I've spent the last week reading World War I poetry, trying to figure out how to get a particular poet who was a Church of England vicar, trying to get a story about him in. And so we want to do something a little bit different. And the science fiction Metal Hurlant style is because I still think Metal Hurlant was one of the greatest comics of all time.
Yeah.
Can I pitch something to you while we're on the show?
Oh, God.
Here we go.
Is it the erotic adventures of Dan Vanguard?
What is he? What? Dan, can you please explain to us what you've just shown us there?
I've made a James Cameron reference and put battles, but the S is a $sign.
Oh,
always thinking about the $sign.
Yeah, he's always about. Yeah, look at him. He's so pleased with himself.
I mean, 1900 was is probably one of my favourite small press books for a couple of years, man. And it really is. It is a great package, and it shines off because of that cover. I mean, that is worthy of Metal Hurlant, isn't it, for me? Or like we talked about New Worlds. Yeah.
Diego is a superb artist. And Diego drew that for us. We were completely blown away. And his story as well. I think the fact that I think you were the first and possibly the only person to catch on that was based on a real person. who was about at the time.
Yeah, I think I looked them up. Yeah, I had to actually go and look them up. But there's also like a Manara feel to his art somewhere for me as well.
I think it's the faces of the women.
Yeah,
very Manara. Yeah. He's Colombian.
Okay. Oh wow. Would you meet him online or? That's not something I say to everyone.
He published something on a Facebook group. No, actually, that's not true. He saw I was looking for stories for Splank, and he sent in a story. But it was one that wasn't suitable. It was a humor story, but it was not going to fit in a comic for kids. And I went back to him and said, sorry, no, this is what we're doing, 1900. And he sent that story. Yeah. He drew that story for it.
Because I know that you've just said there that a lot of, 2000 AD won't allow anyone to make any money other than the printer, which I guess is their deal with Dog Breath and Zarjaz and all these sort of people too. But with 1900 and the associated projects, does that allow you to move into a business model now? Does it, Pete? Does it allow you to then take that off? Because it was quality, that 1900. It's easily up there on a shelf in a newsagent or in a comic shop.
Yes, it would allow us to do that.
Right.
And there's various ways that might happen.
Okay.
We're looking at various ways that might happen.
Yeah. Okay.
I've done some work for the States as well. None of which went particularly well in terms of being paid.
Well, how long ago was that? Was that a recent thing, or without asking you who it is? But
a couple of years ago, we did a guy called Mark McCann from Belfast. Mark wrote. He gave me a co-plotter credit. I was editing his scripts for him before he sent them in, and he gave me a co-plotter on Heavy Metal.
Okay.
Story that Will Simpson painted for us.
Right.
And we then did, together with a guy called Phil Buckingham, a series called Never Never.
Okay.
Which is available from Amazon, but we won't get paid for it.
There you go. That's comics for you, isn't it? Unfortunately, sometimes. Yeah. As I understand it, Metal Hurlant and Heavy Metal are doing this thing where one issue is reprint and one issue is new. Is that right? The French version.
I think it's a mixture at the moment.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Right.
But they're absolutely massive. They are huge.
They're like a copy of Previews magazine, aren't they? They're that sort of size.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're absolutely wonderful looking magazines.
Yeah, beautiful, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah, cool. So what made you turn to the humour side of things as well? Because humour is a very distinctive thing, I'm guessing, Pete. And I guess it's different where you are and it's different where I am and it's different in Scotland. And it's a thing. So what made you turn to that? Because it's not an easy one to break, is it?
It's not. It started whenever, as I say, I retired and I decided to do a blog. And the first post was at the very end of March. And it was about a lost Irish comic called Splank. That was, it was published 2 minutes before the 1st of April, the post, because my PC said it was the 1st of April and the world said it was still the 31st of March. I did a post about Splank being a lost comic that was a version of Pow that was created because the Irish were offended by the character the leprechaun on the front. And I said that Splank was an onomatopoeic Irish word for the sound of being hit over the head with a bit of wet bog oak. So it started as a 1st of April blog post. And then a guy called Mike Higgs wrote and drew the cloak for Pow and later for Smash.
Oh, wow.
And I found Mike's address and wrote to him for something else I was working on, and he agreed to draw a comic strip for me.
Fantastic.
And once I had Mike Higgs's comic strip, which had been my favourite strip whenever I was 7, which was the Cloak versus the Grumpy Penguin, who was me, very clearly me, I kind of had to do something with it, and that's where Splank started from.
Well, now you've sent to us Splank Annual 2024,
yes.
And let's get into this because you have a predilection for dressing as a penguin, Pete.
Yeah.
There's a video you sent of us, which I think is made by your daughter. Am I right in saying that?
No, my nephew.
Your nephew. Of you.
Very well done.
Really good, man. And it's on the BBC website, isn't it? I think it's right.
It was sent in for one of those. It was for his A levels.
Ah,
in
right.
fact.
Okay.
And it was. I had just had a heart attack about 3 weeks beforehand.
Oh no!
Was off work, so my mind was influenced by very many drugs, and he managed to persuade me to put on a penguin onesie and dress up for that film.
So it's the story of a man who's sort of put upon at work because he dresses as a penguin, and he slowly sort of finds his own people, and then the end of it sort of becomes a rave where you lay on the floor dancing.
The day that was filmed, as I say, I was just out of hospital a couple of weeks. He decided he needed to film something just outside our front door, and it was a Sunday morning, very early, very quiet. Outside, and this little Mini is coming towards us, and the Mini pulls up and the window goes down, and 3 nurses from the ward I had just come out of said, "Feeling better, Mr. Duncan." So we kind of had to make a comedy out of it at that point.
They popped around to give you a bed bath. Think about what you missed out on there.
Yeah.
Confessions of a comic editor.
Yeah.
And then that character of you as the penguin is transferred onto the cover of the new annual. Isn't that right?
First of all, he's in the first Splank,
right,
which was published.
He's getting it.
No.
Oh yes, I own that. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
He's in the inside front cover, the cloak versus the grumpy penguin.
Yeah.
And a guy called Davy Francis, who's very well known in Northern Ireland, but Davy used to work for Oink. He drew the origin of the Grumpy Penguin.
Oh, nice.
And the character kind of grew from there. So I've kind of collected artists drawing their characters, beating the Grumpy Penguin and his 2 friends up. So that's a sort of a collection I have from various comic artists.
Frank Quietly was in Oink, wasn't he? Is that right? Frank Quietly was in Oink. Am I right in saying that?
I think so, yes.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Early days, yeah.
What is the Northern Irish sort of like comic creation sort of scene like? Is it quite a small close knit community?
Small.
Like?
Yeah. We know most people who do it, and there's not very many, to be honest. We're trying to expand that. There are 4 or 5 who meet with us. We have what we loosely call editorial meetings most Wednesdays in the Parlour Bar in Belfast, and there's 4 or 5 creators who come along to that.
There's so many sort of like creatives, like groups, I would imagine, all over the UK and Europe and stuff. Exactly the same sort of situation in it, because sometimes it feels like you're the only person in the room who likes making comics. Do you know what I mean? It just seems like everyone else around who's like, oh, comics are for kids, but it's like when you find those other people, it becomes a really close-knit community of like, especially creatives as well.
Because of the internet, we've now had to meet these nerds, haven't we? You know what I mean? That's the problem.
Yeah.
Something like that,
yeah. Which brings me back to something that the Facebook thing. I mean, I've left.
Me too.
I've left Facebook, and I know that like the different social media platforms, and like we talk about all different kinds on this show, and like whether they're a tire fire or not. But I know certainly Facebook, like forums and communities, that's quite a big thing.
UK comics wise, definitely.
UK comics wise, it's very much Facebook's. It feels like it's one of the more popular ones for UK creatives. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. We would find most of our things through Facebook, but then I'm probably one of the only ones of the group who's there regularly. Paddy Brown would be there, and some of the younger ones, but a lot of them don't partake in Facebook, simply because it did become quite toxic.
Yeah.
And any group of people, especially people who care about something, you're always going to get toxic behavior, and
it's synonymous with every social media platform, though.
Yeah.
What platform doesn't or isn't toxic?
We think we're bad, but try looking at a football forum. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's worse. Do you know what I mean? I'm always on the Millwall supporters forum. Terrible. You know,
why? Why are you there? For the lols.
For the lols.
I wonder if it's like an age thing, because like obviously it's more the older folks kind of.
What, the Millwall forum? Is that what
no,
you're talking about?
they use Facebook.
Like, a little bit. It's mums and dads and that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Just because it was one of the first. I'm still on Facebook.
You get a lot of action on it, Dan, you were saying it.
Yeah.
Going back to that thing you said about I meant comics, get your mind out the gutter.
You should see his marketplace ad.
Going back quickly to that, so I meant to mention this earlier when Dan was talking about, you know, looking for people online to work with. I made the mistake once of putting it on about 3 social networks about needing an artist for a story, and I got absolute lunatics.
Yeah,
real lunatics come through. Yeah, some cracking crazy people. You know,
next time I stitch someone up, it's going to be I'm going to do a tweet saying so and so is looking for an artist.
What do you mean next time?
Next time. I'm stitching people up on the regs all the time.
To be fair, I put that out about 3 years ago, and I occasionally still get a message now. Yeah, I really do.
So what we've learned is, Pete, you're far more professional than the
Well, I'm not sure about that. We do get. We've had 1 or 2 lunatics. I've been banned from a couple of Facebook pages for turning somebody's script or art down.
Right.
I've had to tell people not to write to me anymore. I think that just goes with the territory.
Yeah. Some people can be very touchy, can't they? I suppose when you got your head in a page for so long, you know, you can't see the wood for the trees.
I mean,
sometimes
I've read some fucking really horrible, nasty posts on social media, and then I press send. that was Tony's joke. I made that.
Yeah, but also because we're creating, aren't we? Everyone's very close to the thing they're creating, but some people they can't disassociate themselves from it. You know, any kind of constructive criticism.
You've got to be able to disassociate yourself from it being personal. It's not ad hominem, is it? It's just about the work. I'm not saying you are a murderer. I'm saying this page doesn't work. You know what I mean? There's the difference, isn't there, that people don't seem to get. Yeah.
I think there's different ways of saying it. I think we sort of have a policy that we will never tell anyone their work is hopeless. And we will always try and find something good to say about it first. And
shit sandwich, Pete. Shit sandwich. That's how I do it.
And you know, again, this goes back to the 77, the punk thing. If we don't use them, I've told people in the past, do it yourself. You know, if you want to do it yourself. Just it's not going to be with us.
That's absolutely sage advice. I mean, if you want to start up a comic or kind of an anthology, do it, man. Just go for it yourself.
Yeah. But like to make an anthology, put an anthology together and balance and juggle, whether it be different creatives, schedules, artwork, stories, everything else. But you're also writing yourself as well and creating yourself. So how do you find that? I mean, because there are people who are just editing anthologies, and it's a lot of, you know, it's almost too much for a lot of people. So how do you keep the balance of being both creative and project manager in a sense?
By taking a long time. For the past 6 months, 9 months, I've probably not written anything.
Right. Okay.
No, that's not true. I did a couple of things for Splank, just short one-offs, but that tends to be when an artist has said, yes, I'd love to work for you, or love to do something, but I haven't got a script that they like, so I try and do one that will suit them.
That gets my juices flowing. When an artist says they want to work with me, or an artist says, why don't we do a comic about an abominable snowman? And then it starts, you know what I mean? But with so much on, as we all are, you know, with so much going on, sometimes finding that time where you can sit down and write your own stuff. Because we do this weekly. I do another podcast, you know, every few weeks. You know, I've got work. It's like 12 hours a day. Sometimes you haven't got the porridge in your head to swirl around, have you? You know? Yeah, but when 100%. Someone gives you something, when someone prods you, I find it almost an easier thing to turn around. Yeah,
that's where the Cthulhu kids came from.
Right.
There was an artist called Andrew Polley who's sadly not doing comics anymore. He's doing little figures, marvelous little funny animal warrior figures for a tabletop game now.
Okay.
But I asked Andrew to do a strip for me, and he normally writes his own. He said, no, I don't have anything if you give me a script in 2 weeks, I'll do something. So on my desk was the annotated Lovecraft and a Beano annual, and put the two together and you get the Cthulhu Kids.
Amazing.
Well, let's talk. That's important. Let's talk reference influences, because you did send me a little list. One of which is a character that I podcasted about recently. So did you? One's Rupert. Now, the most forgotten comic character, if you call it a comic character in the UK, I'm going to say, yeah.
Still annual, published every year.
Yeah, since the 40s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rupert, I wouldn't read Rupert now, but Rupert's how I learned to read.
Yeah.
And Rupert was my gateway to everything to do with comics.
Okay.
And that's basically why. And again, with Splank, I managed to get Rupert in a marvelous story that Dave Windett drew, that a friend of mine, Colin Sinclair, wrote. That's a mashup of The Prisoner and Rupert the Bear.
Oh, genius. Are you a Prisoner fan as well, Pete?
Yeah, quite. I remember it very well when it first came out, being allowed to watch it and being utterly terrified by that damn balloon thing smothering people.
You know, if you go to the village, you can buy one and they pump it up in the shop for you. And then you have to sort of walk it down the stairs out to the beach. And then you can sort of push it and take photographs. And then, of course, it's useless. Then, of course, it's useless. It's £60 worth of balloon. What are you going to do with it? I'm sure they just go from the shop, get all the air out of it and put it back to sale again, every time someone leaves. But
you could stay on the beach and say, look, take the picture with this for a tenner.
You could do. Yeah, you can do. Yeah,
get off a dozen people, you made your money back.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced I've got over the fear to do that yet.
Yeah, it was. I remember watching it, it shit me up. And there's that famous episode which was banned in America where they're all on. They reckon everyone was on acid, so they weren't allowed to show it in America or something. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Try watching that last episode where they pull faces off of the chimpanzee underneath and all this sort of thing. You're like, what is going on? And I don't think they were on a lot of acid at the time. Yeah. Oh, that's great, man. There's been a couple of Prisoner comics, haven't they? They've never quite got it right for me yet, I don't think.
Kirby did one.
Yeah.
And DC did another one later on, I think.
And then Titan did one a couple of years ago. Yeah. Okay. What other influences have you got?
Well, Lovecraft is mentioned, but in terms of comics, after Wham Smash and Pow, which were this bizarre mixture of Marvel superheroes, very, very strange adventure stories. One was Brian's Brain, about a guy who ran around with an artificial brain that that his dad had made for him, that he used to solve mysteries and things, which became Larry's liver and Splank. After that,
let you go for a beer without affecting
yes. So there was those three comics which had Marvel superheroes in them, and I became addicted to Marvel superheroes. So all the way through the 60s and 70s, reading Marvel, and again almost gave up comics like so many people did. And then people like Steve Gerber and Don McGregor, Steve Englehart appeared and just changed, I think, the way comics were. Possibly even more important than the British invasion, because I think it's what prepared readers and prepared the British people who went over to do what they did with DC later on.
Massively. If you read Grant Morrison's book, he references Don McGregor and Steve Gerber throughout it, doesn't he? There's big influences on him. 100%. That Bronze Age second wave, Stalin, Doug Munch, Englehart, all that firm, mate, amazing. Yeah. You would love the convention I've just come back from, because they're the people I got to meet. It was just like incredible. Yeah,
I noticed you met Steve Englehart, and Englehart's Captain America, I think, it doesn't read all that well now, but at the time it was completely revolutionary.
It really was turning his back on America and stuff in a way, wasn't he? Incredible stuff. And of course, he's Master of Kung Fu as well. And his Avengers stuff is great, and just amazing. Yeah, I never got to meet Gerber, but Munch is the only one I haven't met yet. I'd like while he's still alive. Yeah.
Yes,
Peter, you mentioned. Go on.
I was going to say in 1978 or 79, I started work and lived at home briefly and had lots of money and bought the first 2 years of heavy metal, and that was it. My head just exploded at that point and never recovered from that.
Favorite heavy metal artist?
Probably Drule, and probably the story The Night.
Right. Yeah.
Which I didn't understand at the time, but then whenever you read the context of it, it was just after his wife had died. You recognize that's probably the best depiction of fury you'll ever read in a comic. It's brilliant.
Wow. Okay.
I haven't really read too much of like heavy metal. And
heavy metal now is different, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to go back and find the earlier stuff that was translations of Hurlant, almost. I think
people like Mobius, Bilal, Kaza, Jacques Tardy,
Corbin stuff.
Yeah, Rich Corbin was there a lot, but it then turned into what basically a soft porn mag for a long time.
It's not a bad thing, Pete.
It's always popular. Always popular.
Well, it certainly helped sales.
Yeah.
You mentioned, Pete, about like I refer to Night of the Long Knives, where you kind of one of the hard things about working with a group of kind of people, and there's no kind of contract or stuff working, and you kind of, it's like an honor system, is stuff like this, interpersonal stuff can kind of happen, and this kind of sort of played itself out in your group. Well,
the first issue, as I say, was done with this idealistic idea that everybody would go and get involved in things, and then it went quite well, probably better than it deserved. And whenever we came to put the second issue together, egos started to get in the way.
Yeah,
and people were insisting on stories going in, and people were insisting on stories not going in.
Yeah,
and it turned into a row. And myself and Lawrence McKenna, who I mentioned before, had a chat, and we basically said this is not going to survive unless somebody takes charge.
Yeah.
And Lawrence and I decided we would take charge and make it survive, and that's what happened. So from halfway through the process of putting issue 2 together and issue 3 coming about, I was editor, and that was it. And if there was rows, I would make the decision. And we really, the idea is that we do it by consensus, and then if there's a disagreement, I have the final decision. But to be honest with Lawrence and myself, I don't think we've had a disagreement since, really. It's give and take. But there was one meeting that descended into one end of the table having basically a stand-up row with each other while everybody else was sitting watching, and that was going to be the end of it.
Yeah, and there has to be. I think that's an important thing to sort of point out is when we all have these collectives or we get together with a bunch of people, it's the friends jamming in a band in a garage, and you just. But when you actually want to have longevity and keep going, there definitely, I think, has to be there is a hierarchy. Might seem a bit more business minded, but there has to be the buck stops with this person.
Yeah.
You have to have it, and it sounds quite. People are like, but I want to be free form or loose, and that's all nice. But if you want to continue publishing, it needs to have a structure to what you're doing.
So many things play into it. This is an ideal, isn't it? The collective where we all have our democratic vote. But as we all know, democracy is lovely, but it's not perfect.
Yeah,
no.
And even the craziest, most underground stuff. I mean, like a lot of the anthologies that you read, Tony. There's still a person sort of going, right, we can fit that in here, that won't go, that's not right. There's still planning and structure to it.
You still need a thug, essentially, don't you, really, I guess. Is with Pat and McManus and even Smith at the moment. That's their job. That's it's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you all need it's just a team scenario, isn't it, really, at the end of the day.
But since taking that on, Pete, like how have you felt about it? Has that been an emboldening sort of like having more of the structure to it? Has that really helped?
Yes, and I'll be honest, I've really enjoyed it.
Cool.
And again, because I had the editor role, I mentioned this story Ironic before that was in our 4th issue. That story was someone who hadn't written anything since he was at school. I nagged him to write something. What he wrote wasn't initially publishable, but it was very close to being there. And a group of us worked together to make that story work. And I think I'm prouder of that than almost anything else we've ever done.
Yeah.
And the best moment of all in Sector 13 was handing James his copy with his story in it that he never believed was going to happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
really good.
I love that.
We had that moment with, I know Eamon and Sarah talked about it with DUI, where someone like Johnny Cannon's daughter's helped in a story, and there's lots of people there who'd never done a comic before, and they get to see it in print, and I love that as well. Yeah, you are right, man. That is good. Yeah. And there's creative collaboration, the thrill you get from a creative collaboration, whether it be an editor or a writer or an artist. And I think editors definitely included in this. I've done a couple of editor jobs in a pen name for a couple of companies, and working with the creator, she was a foreign creator, and I sort of helped rewrite a script, and we sort of molded it, and there was backwards and forwards about what she actually meant. We're trying to clarify what she meant in a sentence and stuff. I love all that, man. It's great.
Yeah,
really
it's great fun.
Yeah,
I guess it's finding creators who can also do that whole back and forth and are willing to kind of not let their egos get in the way and say, no, it's got to be my way or the highway.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that again, we go back to that. You want to get the best stuff out the door. And print
there's a time for that, I think, Dan, but it's certainly not early on.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
Well, here's a question for you, Pete, because there's, there could be people listening that have yet to make their own comics yet, or maybe they're thinking about becoming part of an anthology. That's how a lot of people start, isn't it? They do a short anthology, and they have no experience in making comics at all. What advice would you have to them in terms of dealing with an editor? Those sort of, because communication is a big thing.
Answer emails in a timely fashion.
Yes,
it's got to be one of them, isn't it? Yeah.
I actually wrote something that's on our webpage at the moment about not pissing editors off. Basically, don't argue with them. If an editor says he's not going to publish it, don't argue with him. It's amazing the number of people who will come back and argue with you.
It's not going to improve the situation, is it?
It's not. It's not.
But
listen to them.
Could they say, I understand, what is it about the story that isn't right for you? Is it
100%? 100%. And I don't think I've ever said to somebody, I don't want to see this again. I may have said, this will not fit into Sector 13, or because we're in Northern Ireland, there would be certain political stories we would not want to publish in Northern Ireland, where what would be called a mixed group, and we didn't want to get involved in that. So those are the only stories I've ever said, look, we're not in any way interested. But if I go back and say, we published this story, I tell a lie. There was one person I told not to ever write to me again. That's because he sent me a script for a story I had read in one of the Alan Class books about 25 years earlier. And whenever I looked it up, it was word for word for the Stan Lee Steve Ditko strip. No. And he had simply copied it out and sent it through. Jesus.
Fuck me. What a waste of time.
That's the only one, but I don't tell people I don't want to hear from them again. I usually say, try this. Usually.
Yeah. Was his name Andy Intel? That's my little AI joke for the episode. I get that a lot. Jane McDonald told me to stop writing to her. I had that once.
Yeah, but she had her own reasons, Tony.
She was married. It was difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony carried on writing.
Yeah.
I found the tweet the other day. I'd taken a screenshot of that tweet where me and Falpy had written to her and asked her if we do a comic about her. Never replied.
Would she reply? She didn't reply.
Never replied.
Yeah.
We did it anyway.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
I just want to bring up, obviously, like you're at Eniskillon, and I know you were raising money for NHS charities. How did that go? Because that's something near and dear to your heart, isn't it?
Well, yeah, literally my heart. I have a condition where every so often I go into hospital, and because my heart decides that the old 4/4 rhythm that it goes in isn't good enough, and it'll try modern jazz, and I have to be shocked back into a normal rhythm. And I've done that, I think, 25 times now.
My God.
In the past 10 years. And I've seen in A&E what our NHS staff have to put up with in terms of how they're treated and what shortages there are. So the first time I did this was with an online version of Splank, and we raised about 500 quid. Wow. Close to about 500 quid from the online version. I'm very proud to say we are the only free comic I've ever seen pirated. I was sent a link to one of those Indonesian pirate sites that pirates comics, and there was Splank alongside all the Marvel and DC stuff. So that was
You've
a
landed.
proud
You've made
moment.
it. You've made it.
Yeah. And this time round, I think we've got raised about 620 quid so far.
Amazing.
So, I know there's a couple of the slackers who've donated today. Thanks, guys. It's obviously the links in the Slack. If you want to donate, please do. But did you want to just quickly give it out mid-interview, Pete? And I will probably get it off you at the end as well, if you got it ready there.
I must admit that's one I don't have written down. I'll get that for the end.
Okay, get it for the end. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, cool. And then just flipping back to influences, and this is totally because I want to talk about it, is Moorcock. So Michael Moorcock. Ignore that. That was one word when I said Moorcock. We're not going to discuss anything else. Vince almost spat his drink out.
If there's something Tony always wants to talk about, it's Moorcock.
Moorcock. Okay, so you described him as an influence, and he is on me as well. I'll be honest with you. And so, in what way does he influence what you do, Pete? You think?
I think it was seeing 3 copies of the New Worlds magazine that he published whenever it was supported by the Arts Council and was full magazine size, that I just wanted to make a magazine someday.
Okay.
It was the thing that people can do this, because it wasn't normal. The first one I got 3 at the same time. The first one of them was a Mervyn Peake illustration, I think, on the cover for Harlan Ellison's get this right, A Dog and His Boy.
Oh, yeah.
And I read these stories. I was very young at the time, didn't really understand them, but just blew me away. And so that was one influence. But the other thing was I read everything he wrote. Had written by the time I was 15. I'd read everything he'd written and just loved them.
All right, man. Come on then. Top three Moorcocks. Elric's got to be in there somewhere, isn't he?
Well, funnily enough, the first one I read was Knight of the Swords by Coram, the Coram story.
Okay.
And that has always been a favourite as a result of that. Probably
the first comics have done a adaptation of that in that Coram book, I think.
They did.
Yeah.
And Mike Mignola did the art on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I would love him to recolor it.
Yeah. Behold the Man as well is probably the novel he's best known for, which is a kind of future a time traveler goes back to the time of Jesus in it, basically, isn't it?
Oh, I've read that. Yeah.
It's a great book. Yeah. It's almost a novella, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah. And there was one called, I think, The Time Traveler, which was a book of short stories.
Okay.
And I do remember my head, again, almost exploding whenever I read that. It was just, I was too young to read it. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But there was these words that went together, and Moorcock was, and then obviously that led into Hawkwind.
Hawkwind. Yeah.
Space Ritual Live is the album that has been played almost every week since it came out.
Didn't he have like a tear up backstage with that bloke who used to carry his sword about? Who was the lead singer for a while? He used to dress it.
Was it Dave Brock?
Yeah, didn't he? No, not Dave Brock. The other one who did.
Or Nick Turner.
Might have been Nick. He had a tear up because he's a big old geezer, isn't he, Moorcock?
Aye.
I think, yeah. No, for me, Jerry Cornelius. I'm talking to short stories. I remember the one that had an effect on me as I was a teenager was is it called My Experiences in the Third World War? That one?
Yes.
Really good. Where he says, there's this line in it I'll never forget. He says, she walked like a person who had just been raped. In other words, to say that they were familiar with house. And you're like, fucking hell, this writing's just incredible. And then I just reread Dances at the End of Time on holiday. And I'm like, this is Douglas Adams before Douglas Adams. It's just incredible stuff.
Those books are amazing. That was the previous time where he answered a question I asked, which was because I remember reading those, and at the time, BBC Radio was doing an adaptation of a set of novels called A Dance to the Music of Time.
Right.
And I asked, was there any connection between the two? And he commented, you don't ask him something you mention, and he sometimes comes in and makes a comment, and there wasn't, but it was just an interesting thing at the time. But those, you're right, those are Douglas Adams before Douglas Adams, and more imaginative in some ways.
Yeah, I think so. Adams. You reading it and you think this is just crazy stuff, and then you switch onto the fact it's comedic. You're like, right, I get it now. But he's going back to comics. The boys are looking at Splankly Pete. The he is very multimedia. So like you've alluded to, he's had these. Is it the Deep Fix was his own band? You know,
Yes.
his involvement with other bands, but he's also been heavily involved in comics, hasn't he? So we've had various from different companies versions of his characters. Most notably at the moment is the Elric series, which is beautifully done. I reviewed about a year ago, I'm going to say.
The French one.
Yeah.
It's superb. There's also a French Hawkmoon series.
Yes, I've got it in French, but I don't think it's been translated yet. Yeah,
No,
like a big album-sized book. Yeah, beautiful.
Which I don't think he's pleased with.
Right.
Because they've taken away the masks, which was one of the key parts of the Grand Bretagne society, was that everyone wore masks.
Yeah,
and that's gone in the French books. But they look lovely.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, when I went to Angoulême the time before last, they had there was a ball for, I can't remember who the company was now, Dargard or someone, but they had a ball and they all around the outside of this
They had
ballroom.
a ball.
Yeah, they have a ball, a number of them at Angoulême, and they had around the edge of this ballroom. They had like standees of the characters from that book.
Oh,
you know,
nice.
like full-size standees. I was so tempted to try and nick one, get it in my suitcase.
How is a ball different from a disco?
I think people dress up, don't they, more?
Class.
So it's classy music, orchestral music, and fancy dressing up rather than a silent disco.
More Bridgerton, I guess, isn't it?
Throwing shapes in the
without
church
the
of
finger
dance.
banging. Yeah. Good.
But no,
Have you never? Sorry, mate.
The Elric books are superb, and they'd been done before by First and Eclipse, was it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
but
in varying degrees of quality, but they're all being put out in those collections at the moment, aren't they? Which are really nice.
Yeah.
Elric's the one that
Cawthorne.
it's on my sort of wish list to sort of read.
Yeah, I've never read any. I'm gonna have to dip in.
That's the name of Moorcock that I know, Elric. And I think,
he's the. Have you seen that Game of Thrones thing about dragons?
House of Dragons.
The bloke who's played by the Doctor Who bloke, Matt Smith.
Yeah,
it's fucking Elric. That is Elric completely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Looks like him. Fights with a sword like him. Walks around like him.
Similar helmet.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Wow, he does. Yeah. Speaking of Druillet, Druillet's done some Moorcock, hasn't he?
Druillet did an Elric, but it never got published. It became, I can't pronounce this, Yergil Erm, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And there is available a massive, bigger than A3, like 16-page of Druillet's Elric.
Right. Have you ever thought about approaching Michael to do something?
I would love to, but it's known that he doesn't want people to approach him.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And he said that it would be so good to see, but I don't think he wants people to approach him, so I wouldn't approach him.
I think it was Pat who was saying there was a little bit of animosity over 2000 AD, wasn't there? There was a bit of something going on.
Could have been. Yeah.
I know when they approached Druillet, him and Kevin O'Neill thanked him because they took a lot of homage from his work for Nemesis and stuff. And all Druillet said was, "Where's my check?" There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't fuck around.
Yeah.
Where's my money?
I think a lot of people might have been able to say that to 2000 AD.
Yeah. Harlem Globetrotters, Bionic Man. Yeah, but it worked. At least it worked. Yeah,
it did.
Yeah. So it's onwards and upwards for you at 1900 and Sector 13 and all things Peter Duncan. But like, if our lovely listeners want to learn a bit more and like pick up some of the books and raise some money for charity, etc., where can they go?
We have our own webpage where we've not just recently put links in so you can order them now with credit cards, and that is boxofrainmag.co.uk/store, and that will take you directly to the store where we have everything that we're selling available.
Mate, I think I've got almost everything you've got available, and it is all cracking quality, genuinely. I know you did a little bit of a deal on all the Sector 13s going to say about 6 months ago or so, and I snapped them up. They are so good. Having written for a number of 2000 AD fanzines, they are good quality, man. I loved them. Really good. Yeah, top quality.
We got a lot of people who were really, really helpful, and I think we're very lucky at the end that our issue 7, which we did in 3 parts in 3 different formats, I think I'm very proud of how that turned out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you're always on the lookout, aren't you? Because I know a lot of our listeners, as you well know, are artists and stuff. And I know I recently sent you Cockney Kung Fu, didn't I? And you sent me a message saying, "Oh, I tried to get Prolix, but he was busy." Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I do chase people. I definitely chase people, and but I got scripts today that I was reading through for various things. But anybody who's interested, send me a script, an idea, a prose version of your story. If you're an artist, send us samples. Try not to send just samples of single images. Send us some comics you've done, because that's really important for us to know. And you can send it to admin@sector13comics.co.uk. And if I don't reply in a reasonable amount of time, remind me. Please always remind me.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, or you can be reached on the Slack for our Slack members as well.
So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we've one thing that basically has only been discussed on the Slack and a few other people, which is the idea of a Sector 13 funnies, where we do a sort of a Beano 2000 AD mashup. And that's something I'd really like to do. I want to play with a new format, so probably small size newsprint. For that, just to try to do something different.
I know you just got through American Nature and the Santos Sisters, and that I love that paper, man. The paper they're printing that stuff on. Yeah, that's the ideal for me. You know, like that really grabs the color newsprint. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
We did WAP. WAP was done on its compact tabloid format. And quite heavy newsprint. And except that there was one story we had to pull because the ink wasn't going to work on it. It's absolutely spectacular. There's a story by Joseph Parangu, 2-pager, but Joseph's art comes out on that so well. But it's very expensive paper.
Yeah, I get you. Talking about what you were talking about there, about 2000 AD funnies. There's got to be Robo Hunter's got to be crying out for that, man. Is it Hoagie? Is that his name?
Yeah,
there's got to be stories jumping about people's brains for that. Yeah, definitely.
And why that has never come back properly is amazing, because it was so popular.
It was one of my favorites. The Gibson stuff, just incredible stuff. Yeah.
Some of which would not really the football story in particular. I don't think they would reprint now, because it was just racial stereotypes throughout.
Yeah. Plus, they don't want to encourage people smoking, I guess, do you, with his robot cigar?
That's probably
essentially vaping, isn't it? Really.
Yes.
Sentient vaping. Yeah.
Oh, sentient vaping, and what a wonderful phrase.
They got a title for it. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. That's what you call sentient vape. Is the name
of the strip.
Yeah. And if you write that
one
script,
of you can write it.
Yeah, and we'll send it direct to Pete. Thank you very much for joining us this week, Pete. It's been brilliant. And looking forward. I mean, sounds like you're going to be busy for quite some time, so we look forward to all the new stuff coming up.
Thanks very much, guys.
And there you have it, folks. Another one in the bag. And
good lad. I like Pete a lot. Yeah, good lad.
Yeah, so be sure to check out Sector 13 and all the greatness that they've got to come. Looks like lots of different types of stories as well. And
all different kind of
looks
products.
Great. I know you had a look at it, Tony.
Yeah, I think you'd have to order myself a copy of that, because that looks great.
Yeah. And always, if you don't order a physical copy, just go and donate. You can just go and donate to the Just Giving, which we'll put on the Slack as well.
Yeah.
But
as soon as he said, comics that are made in 1877 or whatever, what sort of comics were they making then? I mean, that was the light bulb. That's a pitch, isn't it? It's like,
get the concept. Yeah.
Some of the art in that book, man, fucking hell. Yeah, lovely.
Mate, we didn't touch on it too much, but the comic they got now, the artwork on that and the quality and the production values is fucking amazing. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. And we'll put a link in the Slack. I think it's already in there about him being a penguin. That did amuse us.
Yeah. And of course, if you want to be part of the Slack community, the Awesome Comics Podcast Slack community is a wonderful group of people on there talking about all different things.
Come on
comics.
in, yeah.
And actually,
no money, no bar to joining. Anyone can join.
Yeah. And we're just here to talk about comics and be positive and supportive.
Help each other. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, we don't always need to agree with everything else. You know, we don't. Yeah. Everyone has their own opinions, but it's all about, you know, we're here for comics.
Even us three don't agree on everything, but we managed to get along somehow.
No,
Shut your mouth. But we managed to get on. That's the difference, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're the fucking get along gang.
Yeah. But sexy.
The thing is, he says that, and then I look at his face, Tony. He says
he's
something,
goading
and then,
you.
And then he laughs. He laughs to himself. He laughs to himself. I love it.
I was making a reference to that old Marvel comic that I made a reference to, and only Kieran's Squire's got.
That's for you, Kieran. That's for you,
Kieran.
Yeah, we're going to pour one out for you. Speaking of other shout-outs, have we got any shout-outs this week, gents?
Well, it's not a shout-out, Vince, but I think it's important that we raise a problem.
What? Right, you want to talk about this now? You want to talk about
Is this the one you pre-warned me about?
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning.
I'm sitting down. I'm ready.
Yeah. It's actually, you know, pretty serious. I think the first time in the history of this show, isn't it? We've had to sort of announce this sort of...
Had to deal with this sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah. And it's with a kind of a heavy heart and a lot of sadness and disappointment, I think, that we, like, as a group, we've come together and we've just... I mean, obviously, Dan, he's a bit more sensitive about this, so, you know, me and Tony... Apologies, Dan, but we made the executive decision about this.
I think give a fuck. I'm going to drink a cup of tea.
Yeah, just drinking a cup of tea. Like, you know, this is serious stuff.
This will hurt.
Yes, this will hurt because it's with a heavy heart that we have to disassociate ourselves as a corporate entity. The Awesome Comics Podcast has to disassociate itself and its brand and its values. A conscious uncoupling is what I'm going to call it. With Clifford Cumber. It's.
I mean, shall I explain how it happened, V?
Hang on. I just need to prepare myself again for it because it's frankly hurt me. It's hurt me.
I thought this was all fun and games. When you mentioned that name, like my pit of my stomach, I feel sick now.
Dan, I'm sorry. We kept you out of the decision to protect you, and I hope you understand that because when you find out the real truth, it's.
So let me set the scene for you guys. It's after lights out. I was sharing a room with Cliff. We're in a bed each. Don't get excited. And we'd had this agreement: no talking after lights out, along with no stand-up wheeze. Okay, if you're gonna do a wee after lights out, you do it.
Yeah, it just makes sense.
Classic.
Yeah. And a voice came out of the darkness in this pitch black room, and Cliff said, "You know, you were talking about somebody called Danny Dyer earlier." And I went, "Yeah," and he went, "I don't know who he is." And I didn't say anything, but I turned over and tears began streaming down onto the pillow.
Sick.
Oh,
I feel physically sick.
Awful.
And I struggled through, but it was difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, when Tony told me about this,
one of my best friends in the world,
and when Tony told me about this,
our hero is.
I've never seen him so emotional and upset about this.
I'm choked up now, honestly.
Yeah. It's So I hope everyone out there understands. We just want to go on the record and say there's no ill feeling.
No.
We wish him the best in his future endeavours. And it is with a heavy heart that we've made this decision. But Cliff, you're dead to us. Has anyone? What if we get
also allow me just to say, Qvention is still going ahead on the 20th of January in central London. Venue to be arranged.
Yeah,
from about midday.
But he's not allowed to be there.
He will be guest of honour, but I might not talk to him.
There needs to be when he arrives. There needs to be a minute's silence.
Yeah.
I'd send him that little clip of Danny Dyer walking along the seafront, and he comes.
I was telling him that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that one we walked past
the two guys in it. He turns to the camera and goes, "Couple of salts."
Right, they're like old ladies, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right, darling. Right, love.
Okay.
Right,
to be honest, though, to be fair, all jokes aside, if there's any of our international listeners who don't know what we're talking about or Danny Dyer, please YouTube it or just look at clips because it will change your life.
Yeah. What's the one where he's talking about David Cameron? He's had his trotters out, hasn't he?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Or like when he's on a political talk show and he goes, well, he's just a twat.
Didn't they transcribe his Brexit speech into that Batman Frank Miller Year One page? Have you seen that? That was really well done.
Oh dear.
My claim to fame, I've told this story on the podcast before, but of someone I work with was in a Danny Dyer film.
Oh right.
You know, there's a zombie one where like Danny Dyer's in it, and at the beginning she was one of the extras playing like one of the patients who are infected.
I think Craig Fairbrass is in that as well.
Yes, he is. It's not.
Another classic
Is it
actor.
The Devil's Playground?
Devil's Playground, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Lane to fame.
Yeah.
He did a few zombie ones. He did that one where in the little village, didn't he? Which had a couple of other people in it.
The Devil's Playground is actually okay, I think.
Yeah, it's all right.
I think the Football Factory's all right.
Yeah, Football Factory is hilarious. Unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah.
Racist cab driver. He's my favourite character in it. They just keep getting in a cab and he's just like the same bloke who's always racist. Yeah.
It's pretty much on form, that.
But do we have any shout outs though, gents?
I've got a couple. So American Nature is now out, and I've been pimping this. It's got a pre-release at Heroes, mixture of comics, interviews, articles, and all on the newsprint. I was just talking to Pete about it. It's available through Floating World, previews in the UK, or your local comic shop. I know that Gosh and Forbidden Planet London have stocked it. It's by the same guys who did the Santos Sisters. It has got a Santos Sisters strip in it. It's got something by Rich Tommaso in it, who's the hotness, and Josh Pettinger as well, who's a guy from the Isle of Wight who now lives in America. And it's got an article by me in it, which I talk about fake taxis and blowjobs in it. So I'm very proud of that. Thanks to Jason and the boys over at the EOC, once for being good buddies, and also for reviewing Cockney Kung Fu this week. Me and Prolix.
Yeah, listen to that.
And speaking of Cliff, I massively miss Heroes. It's been last weekend I was in the States whooping it up at an American convention, meeting all my heroes, and this week I've just been on the couch staring into the dead eyes of my wife. You know what I mean? It's like it's not the same. It's yeah, they're my three.
Nice. I was going to give a shout. We've got the couple of draws going on in the Slack. We've got the June one. Dave Hingley's doing some kaiju and monster stuff, which is absolutely going great guns. Next month we're gonna go for, because we've got a general election in the UK, we're gonna do like a politics themed one, but with comics, dictators and megalomaniacs. So we're putting that list together at the moment, so you can have Doom in there, Neymar, stuff like that. Characters who rule their own empires. Ming, obviously, I'd imagine he would pop up at some point. So if you're interested in doing that, give us a shout and get on the Slack. We haven't pinned it out in a little while, acprecommends.com. If you ever wondered what was Dan talking about, what was Tony talking about, what was Vince talking about, what comic was that, go on this site. It's got them listed by show. You click on it, you go and you can find out where you can read the comics. And it's such a fantastic resource, and it's managed by
really good
Uber fan Craig Shields. Cheers once again, Craig. It's such a great resource. Go check it out. That's me.
Cool.
And there you have
I've got no fucking Kickstarters to recommend at the moment.
I'm not on a Kickstarter at the moment. That's the first time in years.
No.
Yeah.
Prepare yourself, gents, because it's probably the calm before the storm, isn't it? That's what normally happens.
We did make a kind of reference to the fact that there was an absolute bout of like a load of them, and now it's all kind of gone a bit quiet. I've been spending the last couple of days getting an email saying, "Oh, you need to fill in the reward survey for this book or that book."
Yeah, I've got a few of them,
which is nice.
So, speaking of rewards, let's reward our lovely listeners with some recommendations this week. Tony,
my first one is Well Digger by Joseph Christie, creator out of Nashville, Tennessee, published by Pip Comics, which I think is his own imprint. And it's somewhere between A5 and regular US comic size perfect bound. It's the cover that I sent you.
Oh, that's the cover I really
lovely cover, yeah.
Also, coincidentally, the same colours as the McDonald's coffee mug that I had in front of me. I don't know if it's that picture.
I've got a real, because it's yellow and black, just for listeners, yellow, black and white, and I've got a real thing for that sort of combination of covers.
Absolutely punchy. Really would jump off the shelves.
The original Daredevil costume, a bit like that.
Yes.
Yeah. He was sat at a table at Heroes next to a guy called Richard Kemp, who was also a very nice dude. I've got a card of his in front of me. And Joseph also gave me a bit of free art, which he was actually drawing while we were talking to him. Awesome. And thanks again to Richard for mentioning us in his Substack today. This is basically a small meeting between two men that far is on a faraway planet, but fits into a much bigger narrative called The Low Spiral, which is it's hard to describe. Science fiction, fantasy, something. If you looked at it, you think it could be a scene out of Dune almost. Is that sort of setting? Black and white interiors. A hooded and masked man walks through a desert landscape. Just him and a donkey that's carrying all his kit, and he starts using divining rods. You know what I mean by them? The two rods that you can allegedly find water with. Is that true? Do they work?
I think that's a load of bunkum.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, he's using them anyway, and he finds it. He gets a positive indication. He starts digging, and the sun is bearing down on him, and a vulture begins to circle. And eventually, as he takes a rest, the vulture sits on the handle of the shovel that he's shoved into the ground and eyes him. He's bogging him out with his eyes. And he's approached by another man, and they begin to talk. And the first man explains that he digs wells, and this is his way. This is his reason of living, raison d'etre, to just dig a well, find water, and move on. And they begin to connect in the conversation about the legends and myths of the area, and it is interesting. And then a voice comes from somewhere else, so I won't spoil it. It's not a long read in any stretch. It's just essentially a story about one meeting, a short interaction that has a strange, pensive, haunting feel to it. But I'm going to say, this may be me, stretching, but I feel like there's an environmentalism message somewhere in there.
Okay.
I think there is. He doesn't, I like fiction that, makes you think about stuff, and this doesn't. It's not slammed in your face if there is, but I kind of feel that's what it's about. There's that allegory, nature versus man, stuff going on. And it's done in a really interesting way. So I'm going to show you. I know people can't read it, can't see it, but it's almost done with a brush. To me,
yes,
like straight on the paper, with a brush. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
almost like a Kuretake pen or something like that. I'm going to say. And here's the bit of art he gave me as well has a similar feel to it.
Yes,
and it's not noodled. It's not super overdrawn. But there's an immediacy to it. There's a specific feel to it all the way through, which I really liked. He uses some traditional panel work, so there are some panels in it, like this. But then some other pages just open up into a big sort of white space. He uses a panelless double page spread, and the use of that big white space and the sun in the air, which is signified as a lantern for the points of the iconography in the story, but it makes you feel the heat and the dryness and the vastness of the landscape and stuff. Really cleverly done. If I had one small complaint, I'd say the lettering is he's used like a typewriter font in it, and it somehow doesn't fit for this sort of fantasy setting. It's very readable. You can read it. It's only really when I'm sort of picking it apart a little bit to talk about here that I thought, no, that doesn't quite fit. I'd maybe change the lettering up if I was going to reprint it. You can find Joseph on Instagram at Joseph P. Christie, Christy, and there's a link tree on there. They're great, those link trees, aren't they? That takes you to his website and a book and all sorts of things. So that is my first one, and it is called The Well Digger by Joseph Christie. There you go.
It's weird. Font choices can hold such a weight. Like, that's why kind of letterers, I feel, sometimes are the unsung heroes of font choices like that. Because if you're using a typewriter style font, there's a lot implied there and a lot of weight and baggage that comes with it.
Someone sitting at home writing a story about it, which may be the implication. I'm not aware.
Potentially,
yeah. I know that letterers are kind of the unsung heroes of comics because they are always telling us about that on Twitter. Little Twitter humour for you there.
Nice.
Yeah, love it.
Dan, what have you got?
I've got two. Fortunately, I just clicked on the thing and it's disappeared. But first one, we've got sent in by our friend Rory.
Oh, cool. I haven't read this yet. Yeah.
Space Boy and the Future King. I've got issues 1 and 2 sent through. This from One Pot Comics. Oh, this is an absolute joy. I really enjoyed reading this. I'll give you a little bit of the blurb. Early 5th century, the Romans have all but left the nation, as well as the kingdom of Kurnow, to fend for and defend itself. Men battle for kingship of this divided land up and down the country. It can be said times are hard, although for one small northern Cornish trading post, life is, shall we say, not without a pulse. So it follows the story of Arthur, and you kind of know where that's going. The young Arthur and his father Uther, who's the lord and the man of the of that kind of part of the world, and he kind of gets up to kind of adventures and hijinks in this part of the world, which is so well rendered by Rory. Obviously, he lives in that part of the world, and there's a real kind of when you're looking at it, it's like, yeah, I've been down there. This is what it looks like. It's just so well done. It's really well captured.
I'm just looking at it now because I just managed to get into the Googling, and even like the cliffs have a personality, haven't they?
Yes,
it's almost
everything's got a character to it. Like the place itself is its own character, and there's a lot of jokes from that part of the world, which when you read them, it's like, okay, that's someone down there making that joke, and it's kind of very regional. I get that joke, but I couldn't make that joke because I don't have the frame of reference to kind of to frame it and set it up. So this is very much kind of like a comic of that part of the world, and all the fucking better for it. Issue 1 kind of like a great setup to it, and then issue 2 carries on with Arthur character meeting up with a young Merlin, and it kind of going from there. If you've got, I tell you what, I really enjoyed this comic, but ideally I'd say it's more suited towards a younger reader.
I was going to say, Rory's work is normally, we've seen it like, the Mignola style stories, the dark, the shadows and stuff. But you can really see, but if anyone who's met Rory,
much brighter, isn't it?
He's such a bright personality, just an absolutely lovely guy. And this is what
comes through in his work. Yeah. I think this, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, Rory. This is the first time you've drawn and written a book.
So, I was wondering that. Yeah.
So, mate, you've done it. This is really good. I'm very impressed. I will be buying this.
Is this available in physical copies, do we know?
It's only digital at the moment, but I think he's lining up the Kickstarter at the moment. He said once he gets his head around the process of sorting a Kickstarter out, which, to be fair, is kind of its own beast with its own challenges.
It's the regular question on the Slack, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a newcomer. Oh, and thank you, Rory. He's put an advert for us.
Yes. Nice work. At the back, mate. You've got a lovely mention for the ACP. Yeah. I really enjoyed this. We'll give this a massive shout out when it comes up on for Kickstarter, because
and we'll have to have him back on the show again.
I'd love to.
It's been a while, actually, isn't it?
I mean, if he's listening, it probably sounds like a threat, but you know what I
mean. Yeah, I think kind of moving on from being an artist to thinking, right, I'm going to give the writing side of it, and he's got issue 1 and 2 ready. That's no small task.
Exactly.
So
it's brilliant.
Top work. Yeah. So more of that down the line.
Nice. So as Dan's got 2 and Tony's got 2, I'm going to sit as the filling of this lovely sandwich, I think, this week.
That's quite a thick filling you got there, baby cakes.
It is a thick filling. It is thick, it is heavy, it is a proper handful, and it is, of course...
Move your hand up and down.
Yeah. It is an archival collection, 40 Years of Scream.
I haven't got this, actually. I'd like to get this.
Which is definitely not for the nervous, which was their sort of tagline, wasn't it? It was their... Those who don't know, Scream was a weekly horror sort of comic for the UK in the 80s, ran for about 15 issues. Obviously, a lot of our international... It was the UK's version of like Creepy Eerie, that kind of thing. Like back, that was what the UK had. As it says on the back, this archival collection celebrates 40 years since IPC launched the UK's most iconic horror anthology. This single volume collects all of the strips included in the 15-issue run of Scream. And it does exactly what it says on the tin, because this book is just all of the comics, basically, just printed back to back.
Great.
Now, produced from the depths of King's Reach Tower by the mysterious undead editor Ghastly McNasty, because that was what the UK... We always, that was the sort of...
That was
the host.
Yeah.
That was the Tharg.
Yeah. The first issue of Scream was unleashed on 24th of March, 1984. An immediate hit with fans, the comic features strips plucked from the fevered imaginations of British comic book alumni, including Alan Moore, John Wagner, Alan Grant, Simon Furman, and Jerry Finley Day, all beautifully realised by artists including Eric Bradbury, Cam Kennedy, Jose Ortiz, Ron Smith, Steve Dillon, and Jesus Redondo. I mean, that's a hell of a lineup, and certainly it's a hell of a book. And I mean,
well, chunker.
Say this is a... I mean, those Creepy and Eerie collections are quite thick as well, aren't they? So, but this was kind of... Scream was always... I wanted to read it again for ages and ages. And, of course, you can go to eBay and have a look at all the issues. Those collections probably sell for a little pretty penny in itself.
Not always in great nick, are they?
Not
because
always,
of the paper.
Yeah. So what they've done here, it's very clean scans, black and white for most of it. It's got the covers in it though, like it's got the full colour sort of, and they're clearly scanned covers. It's not like they've taken original artwork, but it's just nice to see them clean. They've treated it well. This is a Rebellion Books, Treasury of British Comics. I heard about this. I think it was Down the Tubes did an article. It was just sort of released. It popped up, and then I was already 2 weeks behind the curve when I discovered it. I was like, oh shit, I need to get my hands on this. It's hardcover. It's £45, but on like the 2000 AD shop, you can only get the digital edition at the moment because the hardcover's sold out.
Wow. Okay.
Joe, my better half, got it for me as a birthday present, which is very kind.
Happy birthday again.
Thank you. And she didn't go. She managed to find it on Amazon. Don't know what the price for it, but I've looked now, and it's not in stock on Amazon either. So I don't know. Right. I don't know how many versions. There'll be some sellers somewhere online that will have. I don't know. It was a massive edition. This is a beautiful sort of hardcover. It's got like a silver foil on the word Scream. The actual sort of logo for the Scream comic was something I always loved anyway. I think it's just brilliant. But also just reading it, it was great to sort of. I can remember it and yet not remember it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's rereading, because when I was a kid, I wasn't really fussed about the Dracula files, which I know is one of the signature titles for the series. And when that started, I mean, I know it had different. It kept Eric Bradbury. Eric Bradbury is through the whole series of the Dracula file from the looks of it. The script, which starts with Jerry Finley Day, Simon Furman writes some later, so the writers sort of changed up. But I'm getting a real kick out of that one, and I think there's stories like Terror of the Cats, and which is a world where cats are just attacking people. There's Monster, Tales from the Grave, lots of different Library of Death, The 13th Floor. Some of these titles have gone on to be collections of themselves.
Yeah, I've got the 13th Floor collections.
And I think the Dracula Files had a collection as well. I think
and a sequel as well.
I think that came back, didn't it? Yeah. So it's full of absolutely it's just glorious, nice. I say oversized. It's a hardcover that's printed to the scale of the original weekly UK comics. I'm having immense fun. I'm still working through it because I'm choosing not to like pick a strip and then read all of the chapters of that strip. I'm reading all of the issues. So I'm reading and as well as those ongoing strips, there's one and done little stories, a 2-pager I read of like there was this fertilizer that had some mutation in it and the trees.
Is it a load of flumps?
Probably, yeah. And the trees just start eating people that are picnicking underneath it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like a one and done little, So it's full of stuff like that. The only issue I have with the book, and I think this is something when publishers take these sort of archival things and put them together and reprint them, there's a sense sometimes of the rush. Maybe it's me being the designer and book layout brain in me, that there is with these old comics, sometimes you'd have a comic and it would be full page, ends on a half page because that half of that page was an advert for some, I don't know,
bubblegum or something.
Bubblegum or crisps or something like that. Obviously, in these reprints, they don't put those in, they take those out. So what do they put in there instead? And they just
not blank page.
It's not blank, but they put in just some sort of message that's to look Scream-like, but it's done in a terrible, basic Photoshop drop shadow sense. I might post something on the Slack to sort of represent what it means. I'm going to show the chaps here a full page version of it. I don't know whether you can see.
Come on, I could do that.
And it's just they could have just designed something and had it in solid black, and that would have been more effective and kept it more in style with what the book is. So that kind of thing I felt was a little bit rushed, but the meat of it is the original strips.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's really going. People like us, these nerds who put these stuff together, think you rushed that.
There's some Alan Moore in there as well, isn't there?
Alan Moore, I didn't know He's the one who started Monster, which was
Yeah. Then he handed it off, I think, didn't he?
They handed it off pretty immediately, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
And you can tell not the quality doesn't decline. It's just the storytelling. The Alan Moore stuff's a little bit more verbose, and then it becomes a little bit more streamlined.
You told the anecdote about your postman lobbing books in through the window.
Yeah.
He didn't do that with that, did he? Someone.
No, he didn't. He would have killed someone. Because this is, like I say, it's got all 15 issues in. I don't know if I think it's just the 15 issues. They did a holiday special, didn't they? I don't know if it's got
they did. I think they've done a couple.
Yeah. There's even like a little game in the back, one of those classic sort of. They've even reprinted all that. It's a lovely put together book, and to be honest, it's given me everything I wanted because I wanted to read Scream for the longest time.
Have you or anyone played one of those games properly, like with a dice?
I didn't. I didn't.
I've never done.
They're almost like a little snakes and ladders like game, isn't they? Yeah.
I didn't tell anyone to read comics, so I used to get beaten up if you tell anyone. So didn't.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
Yeah. So there's some interesting. There's a few pages of extra material in the back. Some of the they've got some adverts and some sketches and stuff. And it just came at just the right time because I know when we were at Lawless there was that omnibus,
that lovely piece
of Scream artwork.
Yeah.
So if you're a fan of Scream, you've probably already got it. But if not, have a look out for it or get the digital because there's some great UK sort of horror books.
That's the thing I noticed when I was at Heroes. Nobody in America knows about British comics. There's very few people would know Hotspur or Scream or Eagle or anything like that. Yeah. They know, like Pete was saying earlier, they know 2000 AD. That's it.
Yeah. That's it.
And I think, obviously, for international fans who would know like Creepy and Eerie, definitely look out for Scream because it's the same sort of style, but it has a very British.
More of a younger reader thing than
yeah. But a great stuff. So 40 years of Scream, absolutely loving it. That's my one. Dan, what's your second one?
I got sent through an advanced copy of Mahoneys, Volume 2, Issue 1.
Yeah.
All right.
Story by Rich Carrington, art and letters by Brian Dawson. First off, massive shout out to Brian Dawson because his artwork goes from strength to strength on every issue. There's a scene in this book which I'll get into it. So in the last arc, essentially the bar is blown up, and this starts kind of like new readers. This is a great jumping on point because they've rebuilt the bar. And they're going to have a grand opening in the issue. If to kind of sum it up, like the bar with no name in Marvel, where all the supervillains go and drink. Mahoneys is kind of like that, and it's kind of the bar keeper is an ex-supervillain himself, and it's more the kind of the day-to-day life of the supervillains getting up to hijinks. One of the barmaids called Kat, who's kind of like a Catwoman kind of stand-in. She goes on a date with a guy who's like a Batman Bruce Wayne stand-in, who's funding the bar's rebuilding. It's really fun. It's really enjoyable comic. I mean, I prefer this kind of stuff to the big world-ending stuff that the first arc was about. The more kind of down-to-earth kind of character studies of these characters, the villains and the heroes, is like, for me, what really appeals. Going back to Brian Dawson's artwork, there's a scene where the Bruce Wayne character takes the barmaid character into kind of like a fancy hotel, like the first floor, and it's completely decked out. See if I can hold it up to the camera, you might be able to see it. I have to hold it at an angle, but it's so well done, so well rendered.
Oh, nice.
Very impressive. And it's just the two of them in this place going for this kind of exclusive meal, but lots of fun action. I'll keep an eye on it for when it drops because I really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
Good stuff, man.
Tony, sign us off.
So my one is a book, actually. It's not a comic, weirdly, but it's called Comic Shop. The Retail Mavericks Who Gave Us a New Geek Culture. It's written by Dan Girino, and it's got a forward by the mighty Tom Spurgeon. I've got the paperback version. I think this is an update of the hardback version, which has extra stuff in it. Never seen it before. Had you guys seen that before?
Never seen it.
No, I've never seen it before, but I found it when I was in Heroes, when I was in Charlotte, at the shop that runs the convention. So I landed on the Wednesday, and you can't pick your tickets up till the Thursday. So I thought, off the plane, still a couple of hours while the comic shop is open. So rather than do what normal people do, book in the hotel, I went to the comic shop. And I thought I always like to support local comic shops whenever I'm in a town.
Yeah.
It used to be the beauty of Comics International, didn't it? You could go to the back page and see what comic shops are in that town.
Yeah.
And I did that. I did that in Charlotte, and I've been there before actually with Falpy, and it's a lovely shop, really good shop. Knocks spots off most shops in the UK. And I was chatting to so I picked this up because I hadn't seen it. Picked a couple of things up there to sign John Byrne book and all this sort of thing. So I picked them up and chatting to the bloke behind the counter, super friendly chap, and he says, "We're in this book. We're mentioned in this book." So that's a nice little touch, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great.
You know what I mean? And so what the book does, it's chronological, mostly history of comic shops and how the ups and downs of their world, basically, and how they champion us, really. And they're the unheralded champions of the comic hobby, aren't they? They're like the badly treated mistress of the publishers, aren't they? If it wasn't for comic shops, the publishers would be making no money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or pretty much no money. And the book refers to them as cockroaches of pop culture. In that a lot of these dudes will survive if there's a nuclear, war. So they will survive when there's this massive downturn in the comics industry that happens. It's got a lot of interviews in it, a lot of references to comic book shops, and lots of talking to people working them, founding them, owning them. And it chats to the rise and fall, and I put in brackets, wash and repeat when I've written this up. All the way from Phil Seuling, who's the comic fan convention organizer and some say inventor of the direct market, along with some others, that led to Seagate Distribution. And it talks about the history, and he's honest about it, which I really like. He mentions examples of their bad treatment, bad treatment they've given others, and it does specifically name things that have been bad. So, for example, it specifically names for a whole page Secret War 2 and how I think they call it a non-event. It was an unevent rather than an event. Because it was so badly sorted out and sold so badly that it just was not worthwhile.
I've not read any of that. I've not
seen as a bit of a tipping point, I think, as well. Loads of black and white photographs in there of the creators throughout history, from the 60s onwards. There's a picture of Shelton Drum, who's the guy who organises Heroes that we talked about last week. If I had a couple of thoughts on it, I'd say that the cover's terrible. I don't really know what it's saying.
Agree. Yeah.
Is that meant to be a shop? I don't know. It centers a little too much on a couple of shops that I sense are shops that he attends that are his favourite shops. But it does do right by the big ones as well. There's a lot of talk. Chuck Rosansky from Mile High, Vault at Midnight in Ann Arbor, Comic Experience in San Francisco, what's the name? Brian, I remember the dude who runs that shop also writes a load of columns, and he was a guest actually at Heroes.
Right, okay.
Talks a little bit about Jim Handley's in Staten Island. It's got a picture of the original Jim Handley. So I think you've been to Jim Handley's, Vince, haven't you? The one underneath the Empire State.
Yeah.
Well, that then moved to become a smaller shop, and I think is now closed. But it originally started on Staten Island, and it's this tiny ramshackle shop, which is how I used to see comic shops. Yeah. When I was at boarding school in Ipswich, there was a local shop called The Globe. It's no longer there now, and you had to kind of find it. It was almost like a fucking secret, to be fair. Full of people smoking weed, and ignoring me because I was 14 or something. So it talks a little bit about collectors versus readers. That's a big subject, and one we haven't really tackled. But I always used to refer to myself as a comic collector. It used to be my hobby, and I suppose with the rise of digital, that's kind of disappeared a bit. Yeah, talks about the rise of YA, the retailers who make books. So the best example they give in the book is the Turtles. So the Turtles would not be a comic, would not be a massive franchise if it wasn't for the comic shops that got behind that comic.
Totally, yeah. Without doubt.
And it only printed 4,000 copies at the first issue. So if it wasn't for those guys getting that word of mouth out to their customers, that we wouldn't have the Turtles now. We wouldn't have the movies.
That's
video
quite timely. There was some Turtle anniversary this weekend.
Oh, was it?
40 plus years or something they've been around.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah. Good. So that's my second one. Comic shop, the Retail Mavericks, who gave us a new geek culture by Dan Giorino. And if you get the 2018 version, it's got I think it might be 2019 it came out, but updated and expanded version. Okay.
Nice. We're always ones for supporting comic comic shops in your local stores. So if you've got one,
definitely.
And if you've got one in your neighbourhood that you think deserves a little bit more love, or that maybe they've got an event sort of happening soon, then let us know about it, because we want to let the world know about where to get their weekly comics. And if there's anything that you want us to talk about in upcoming shows, or shoot the shit about, maybe it's just the three amigos just putting the world to rights. There's several different ways you can get in touch with us to let us know. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on the media that is social. On Instagram, we're at awesomecomicspod. On, what is it, Dan? What is it this week? Is it Twitter or is it X?
It's definitely going to be X.
Nice. At the Awesome Pod, where we'll be posting up about the show, some of the comics we talk about every week, and all the things you should be checking out. Thank you to everyone that follows us, no matter where you follow us, actually. And thank you for listening to us, whether it was on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a nice 5-star review, something to say about... It's that time of the night. It's that time of the night where my tongue gets too big for my head. Indeed. And so instead of saying it, perhaps I should type it, and you should type a nice review for us and leave it on Apple Podcasts, as well as Spotify, where you can say something nice in the comment section. And if you listen to us on Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife, what other networks are we on, Tony?
Well, we're actually on the Doctor Who theme network. I don't know if you know this. It's called None of That Season Was Explained. Why the fuck was it snowing?
It's all one word in the URL. It's all one word. I don't even watch it, and yet I still...
Don't blame me.
I don't know how, but somehow I still understood that reference.
Yeah.
And join us next week, where we'll be talking about all things comics. And in the meantime, where can people find us online, etc.? Tony?
Neverownanything.com.
There you go. Dan?
You can find me on Twitter, aka X, at Vanguard Comic, and you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Nice. And you can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. Thank you very much, as always, for listening to the show. Thank you to Pete for joining us.
Cheers, Pete.
Be sure to check out his comics. Be sure to check out the comics that we talked about this week, and look forward to next week. We're going to be talking about even more, because we're all about the comics, aren't we, gents?
May we? Comics.
May we. And Tony, do you want to sign off using your French language certificate?
I don't have one of those.
Really? Is it just a swimming certificate? Is that
Au revoir.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go. How's that?
I think that's lovely. See, we're properly international now.
I know one language Tony's totally proficient in.
What's that?
The language of love.
I know. I've got a fucking PhD, my friend.
But does he love our listeners?
Hang on, you got a fucking PhD, or have you got a PhD? Anyway, we need to talk about
I got a PhD in Stinger.
Have a lovely week, everyone.
Yeah.
From Dan, Tony, and myself. Well, I guess, what should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.